when you're in industry, you really need to be able to collaborate with others, right? And, that collaboration can be, just to bounce ideas off of somebody, or it could be, to seek their advice. So a mentor of sorts. You obviously can't know everything. And even though, you feel confident about your knowledge base, there are so many things that you're not going to know. So finding those collaborators that can fill those gaps.
Well, welcome to Pet Food Science Podcast. I'm really pleased to have Dr. Kathy Gross with us today. We're going to talk about careers in pet food, and I'm just absolutely sure it's uniquely, of these podcasts, uniquely applicable to many careers. And Kathy and I have walked through it. Kathy, you've done this successfully. You started in a good position and you moved to a very high position. I wonder if you could just start by giving a little background, maybe different from your academic background, but more from your background in leadership.
Absolutely, Dennis. Thank you for inviting me today. So I'm a technical person by training. And when I first entered the pet food industry and research and development, I started as an individual contributor. I was formulating products, I was conducting research studies. And, as I started to do those and collaborated with people, I got an opportunity to, kind of move to the next level, which was managing a smaller group of people, still, in the technical space. And, one of the things that happened to me is I started to see things that, were gaps. And I started to talk to my manager about, hey, I think we need to have, something in this space that allows us to have collaborate better with marketing. And so I'd be talking to my manager about that. And then all of a sudden it became, something that senior leadership thought we needed. And because I had brought it up to my manager, it was kind of like, okay, you can go ahead and do that now. And so, you got tagged with, a project, a leadership type of project that, was important to the business and building some new capabilities. And then, I had the opportunity to kind of move around within research and development to different areas. So, managed a research group for a while, managed kind of intellectual property and claims for a while, managed a product development group for a while. So each of those times you kind of brought with you kind of your learnings from your previous role, and you built upon those and, broadened your network. And so as I moved through my career at Hills Pet Nutrition, I had opportunities to kind of take on bigger and bigger responsibilities. And ultimately, when I retired, I was the worldwide director for clinical research, the nutritional design of Hills products, and also for all of the product claims areas. So it played a central role between the research side, the product development side, the marketing, regulatory. So it was kind of a central role there that my team played. So it was just a natural progression of a career, from an individual contributor to, a leadership role. But it gave me, I was never bored and had a lot of opportunities to learn things.
Tired of navigating the pet food industry alone? The Pet Food Inner Circle brings together the brightest minds in pet nutrition, where seasoned professionals share real insights and tackle the challenges that matter most. When you need answers, industry leaders are just a conversation away. Ready to join the circle? Visit petfoodinnercircle.com and connect with your peers today.
Kathy, as you developed in your career, did you have a plan? You said, I want to achieve this, I want to go there. Or it sounded almost like you were doing a really excellent job at the position you were in and it more or less naturally moved forward. What was your perspective, or looking back, what do you think you had as you moved forward?
Yeah, I think I always had a natural curiosity about, what other people did and trying to understand their roles in the company. And so I was always, linking with different people. And, I was the one talking to marketing and asking them, because I didn't think like a marketer, right? So I was asking those questions. I went to the plant because I wanted to understand more about when my formulas that I was developing and they did well at the plant or they didn't do well at the plant test. Why was that? And so I spent a lot of time trying to understand things from different perspectives. And therefore, I think I had a little bit more visibility in some cases. So when opportunities came along, the senior leadership would say, well, Kathy has done a little bit of this before, and most of the time I was thinking about how would I do things better? Right. And trying to, at least in, what my sphere was at the time, what can I do better in this role? How can we make it simpler, faster, easier? And ultimately wanted to have better products out on the market for our pets. And so that was really what drove me, was always doing better, but kind of this continual learning.
Well, you and I have talked about it, and you mentioned something in that discussion I wanted to sort of talk with you about, because when we hired people, I think often we hired tremendously technically positive people. I would say, and of course, hired a lot more people than I fired, but I would say the people that have not worked out in our space wasn't for technical reasons. We actually selected people that could do the technical job. What we missed, and what perhaps they missed, was the need for interaction and the requirement to know what you didn't know and find people to fill that space. And so we were talking about it before, but let's talk about it again. What was your experience? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree 100%. You can't be an island in a company. Maybe there's opportunities to do that in academia where you can, be, on your own and do exactly what you want to do. When you're in industry, you really need to be able to collaborate with others, right? And, that collaboration can be, just to bounce ideas off of somebody, or it could be, to seek their advice. So a mentor of sorts. You obviously can't know everything. And even though, you feel confident about your knowledge base, there are so many things that you're not going to know. So finding those collaborators that can fill those gaps, and then finding people that can be, that devil's advocate for you too, and help you see the other side of something. So collaboration, in all its different forms, to me is absolutely critical skill. And, just trying to be everything and know everything on your own is not the recipe for success.
No, it really isn't. And I think one of the things that makes that so true is it's a lot of fun to work on a well-functioning team. It's really exciting, and it have that mutual respect, and you get so much more done than you can do by yourself.
Oh, I agree. I think back to a couple teams that I was on, um, and what made them great, And one of the things that I remember distinctly was the diversity of the team. So, we were pulling people from different parts of the world to be part on the team, even from other parts of the company. So Hills is a part of Colgate Palmolive. So we were pulling people from oral care to be part of the team. And then, a strong team leader, you had these collaborative learning opportunities. So, everybody was there and they had different levels of knowledge of what we were going to work on. So there was an opportunity for everybody to kind of get level set. So some things were redundant for others, and some things were new for people. So you all kind of started at the same level, but you were bringing all those different perspectives. And, it was a really empowering type of team, when you can pull all those people together. And, it helped definitely to build my network. So then later, I knew, hey, I know this guy in Colgate Finance, and he is brilliant. And he's not going to judge me because I don't understand all these financial things, but I really would like to. So it ended up that person was a really great person to reach out to and, help me later in my career too.
That's fascinating. I think, interacting with people and sort of moving ideas through to actual application is just such a significant part of our careers. When we do that, and you sort of mentioned it before in the positive sense, but there's there in a negative too, where you don't always see eye to eye with people and you can have very strong disagreements. Do we want to let's talk about it a little bit. How might we, advise someone to handle that and get out by expecting it will happen, but when it does, what do you recommend?
Yeah, there's always going to be differences of opinions. There's going to be differences in how you want to proceed to go forward. I think the you always have to keep the big picture in mind, right? So, what are we trying to achieve? And if you can, agree on what you're trying to achieve, a lot of times there's a way forward in the impasse, right? So, there was lots of opportunities where, manufacturing and those of us in nutrition formulation, we're a bit at odds because manufacturing wants things that are simple and easy, and they don't want a lot of new change and new things. But when you start and say, okay, but the end goal is we have this new product that we want to put on the market, and then you start to listen to each other and say, okay, I understand. Yeah, the way I formulated this might be a little too complex, and, would cost too much money. Maybe there's a different way to think about it without truly compromising what your end goal is.
So that's great and very helpful if you think, okay, let's agree on a goal. I think from a teamwork, that's just essential, right? So we all have to agree we have the same goal, or in fact, that it's going to be a failure. There's times when that doesn't work either, right? So I have some people in mind. We may even share some of those people. I hope it wasn't me, by the way, but where that person's just hard to work with. And how do you manage that?
Yeah, I think, there's always going to be people that you don't really gel with, right? Not everybody's going to be your best friend. Um, I think, that's when, if it is an opportunity where you can maybe talk with your manager, maybe they have some insights into, how to better work with that person. Perhaps there's a way to, restructure the team so you don't necessarily have to always, be there and butt heads or always be on the same team. And typically, all companies have some codes of conduct. And, if a person is really stepping out of line and they're very difficult and, that's treading over into, behaviors that are not acceptable, that needs to be pointed out as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think, it's about maturity and, being able to be maybe the bigger person, the better person in terms of, don't get sucked into kind of some of the drama that would happen with a person.
Well, there's challenges. I wanted to at least touch it as we went by, and I think people challenges. There's certainly challenges associated with making it work, making that discovery. I know early in my career, I felt like, and of course it was because of where we were working, we had tremendous resources, but really our most limiting thing was good ideas. Now I would say, I think the research scientists would say, oh no, we've got lots of good ideas. And of course, pets, pets to use in research are always, a very precious commodity, money always limiting, but we had the ideas that, they really, good ideas, they're tremendously empowering and usually don't have one a day.
That's right. Yeah, people that go into the science field, they're full of ideas and always want to have things to pursue. And, I think one of the hardest things for me was always, at there's always where you have to kind of stop and say it's good enough and we need to move on, right? And, I'm just naturally curious. And of course, anytime you do a feeding study or, you're working on something, it usually creates, you might answer a question that you set out to answer, but then 20 more pop up. And so then you want to, keep going down that road. And sometimes in industry, there isn't opportunities to kind of pursue some of those passions if they're not as business relevant as they need to be. So yeah, that was always hard for me because I was always like, but what if, and how would this go? And what makes that work? And, I wanted to do more of that sometimes, but there was always, okay, let's jump on to the next thing. And that was always fun too.
I think wherever we are, there's limits. I know in academic interactions I've had, you have significant limits about finances. Usually, where can I get grants? That's just going to be a very driving component of where your research will be. So, figuring out how to do that and find a place where you can be happy and successful, that's certainly part of any good career.
Yeah, for sure. One of the cool things that I'm doing now, Dennis, is there's a new organization. It's called Women in Pet Food Leadership.
Yeah, tell me about
It was just started a couple years ago, and some of the founders, are the icons in the pet food industry, and from various companies. And so they started this organization, and we have several different committees, and mentorship is one of them. And so I'm very involved with the mentorship committee, and that's, something that I feel very passionate about, in terms of, I hope that I've learned something in my long career that would be helpful to young people starting out in the pet food industry. And so we work to have activities. The Women in Pet Food Leadership, we work to have activities at a lot of the major pet food related meetings. So at animal science meetings, at, the Pet Food Forum, at, the Pet Food Collab at Kansas State, and, other meetings that are happening throughout the year. And so there will be networking things as well as leadership opportunities and speakers, and then this mentorship thing, which is just getting off the ground. But it's an exciting thing for me to help give back and hopefully, be there, be that person that someone can jump to and ask questions about, or help provide resources to them as they're just trying to navigate their way in the pet food industry and be successful.
That whole thing of mentorship seems really valuable, certainly for everyone. What How do you feel about, you're looking back, you're saying, I'd like to be a mentor, I have things I can share. What if you're the younger, person? How would they go about finding such an individual? What's your advice for them?
Yeah, so, mentors can be, a one-time mentor. So you're facing a situation and you really seek out somebody that maybe has been there in your shoes. And they can be within your company or, outside your company. Um, but sometimes it's just, hey, I'm navigating this rough piece of water right now in industry. I don't know where to go, and they can be helpful in that way. Sometimes there's structured mentorship opportunities, within companies. I think what we're trying to do with the Women in Pet Food Leadership is, offer those that are, in various stages of their careers, opportunities to connect with people that, can offer them expertise. So I think back, to my opportunity to have Mark Morris Jr. as a mentor. When I first started working with Hills, he was still there. And, him being kind of the godfather of clinical nutrition. But I think the thing that he mentored me the most on was passion. The true love for creating things and working through problems. Like every project you work on, you're going to run into a problem. There isn't going to be anything that runs so smoothly. And, he was always like, let's figure out how to get through this. Let's brainstorm on this. Let's pull in somebody else. So he was a great mentor in terms of, helping me understand that hurdles are natural. And if you're excited and passionate about things, then you can figure out those ways through.
Mark was a fascinating person. I didn't have the close mentorship relationship with him, but he was the boss. Um, he had more charisma than anyone else I've ever known. If he was in the room, people looked at him. If he was at a party, everybody remembered. He was remarkable. I don't suppose that could be taught, but he sure had it completely and very significantly.
Definitely. Yeah.
We sometime maybe we'll do a Mark Memories time. I don't know who would watch it, but you don't interact with people like that very often in a lifetime.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I have a lot of fond memories.
One thing you mentioned that I think we should talk about a little bit was, success in anyone's career needs to be kind of recognized. And I know, as I observed you and your career, you were trying to get people to sort of celebrate and recognize success. And looking back, what do you think about that? Maybe how might we learn, apply celebrating success, appreciating success? What do you think?
I think it's absolutely essential that tell people what's happening. I was always I felt like I was a very honest and straightforward type of manager with people. And so I told them that up front, that, we like to do, recognize people when they do a good job. I'm going to let you know if, there's other things maybe that we could improve upon. And I think as I work through things, making sure that people were recognized, even for small things. And I know I had managers that said, they're just doing their job. You don't need to recognize them. And I didn't believe that. I felt like, if you're putting forward the effort and you're doing a good job, you don't have to always go above and beyond to be recognized, because it's important to do the things that you need to do. And even in industry, and we work with great people, there were people that didn't do what they should have been doing, right? And so I really felt like it was important to recognize the small things and the big things. And, there's different ways to do that. A lot of it is just that quick, great job. After somebody does a presentation, a lot of times I would send them a quick email that said, "You did a stellar job on today's presentation. This part in particular was really great, and just pointing out to them. And I think just that affirmation of I'm doing a good job, and then they understand, that you are paying attention and people are taking notice, and you're not just, a little cog in the wheel somewhere."
Well, Kathy, if you look back and say, I've had my career, I'll tell you that it was a successful one, at least, from the viewpoint I had. You certainly grew in influence and in authority over things. What would you tell young scientists they might look for, and maybe even things they could try and apply looking ahead to be successful in their career?
Yeah, there's a lot um, of small things, but I would say, connect with those people, and not just people in your own organization. Maintain those connections and network outside, because you never know when you're going to need to call on somebody for something. Um, you know, get involved in things. So I know, there's a lot of balls to juggle when you're working. So you've got your work life, you have your family life, you have, other activities or volunteer things you may be doing outside. But, try and keep those connections active as much as you can. I would just say, connect with people. That's really what's going to help you be most successful.
Well, thank you. I've been interested in your ideas and a lot of areas for chat. So I appreciate you taking a little bit of time today to talk about your career and how you might advise someone in a career. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. Next time, Dennis, I can be the podcast host and ask you all those questions.
I think it's just worth it, and maybe we should switch roles and have a little more of the dialogue. I was thinking, how would I answer that question? Because we had different perspectives. In some ways, I was pulled into the management role that you and didn't achieve worldwide director, just in case you want to know in the audience, but stayed more on the individual contributor, where I maintain I still had my sweetest spot. And, so that's interesting. We should chat again, Kathy. I'd enjoy that.